We just to let you know, yesterday afternoon, my attorney, Bob Stevens, received word from the Attorney General's office that the Attorney General would no longer defend the state of North Carolina to defend the right of our state to require photo ID to vote, which is now the law in 33 other states. We think it is the proper law. And it's amazing that the Attorney General will not fulfill the responsibility of his oath of office to defend our laws of North Carolina. And we're very disappointed to hear that that's, again, his office is not willing to do his job. In fact, I question whether he should even accept a paycheck from the state of North Carolina anymore, because he continues to not do his job as his oath of office requires him to do. And that is very disappointing, but we will continue to appeal this process. We're figuring out the process in which to appeal, whether to go straight to the Supreme Court or go to the 15-member board. But listen, if a photo ID is good enough to get some Sudafed at your local drugstore, which the Attorney General promoted, it's also good enough to vote. And that's true in 33 states, and it should also be true in the state of North Carolina. It's a common sense measure to have photo ID to vote, to ensure the integrity of our election process, not just in North Carolina, but the United States of America. Jimmy Carter's commission recommended that every state have photo ID. The Democratic Convention required a photo ID to vote at the Democratic Convention in Philadelphia. And if it's good enough for the Democratic Convention, it ought to be good enough for our Attorney General Roy Cooper. It ought to be also good enough for the state of North Carolina. So with that, I'll be glad to take any questions. Yes, sir.
The Fourth Circuit didn't mince many words and said that the law was passed essentially it was a discriminatory law, that it discriminated against black people. By appealing it, are you not defending discrimination?
Absolutely. Well, it's ironic. The court in Winston-Salem, which by the way is also here, said nothing of such. It was obviously a very political opinion. It was 2 Obama appointments and a Clinton appointment in that court. They are now referencing the comedy channel for court rulings in these liberal courts. I think that's going too far, and we ought to allow this to be heard by other courts. Just as, by the way, the Attorney General had no problem participating in the appeal when a judge ruled in favor of photo ID. It's only when they rule against photo ID that the Attorney General decides not to participate and do his job. So he's obviously letting his political opinion impact his job as Attorney General. And as we've said before, I think, frankly, his ability to do his job while running for governor is a terrible conflict of interest based upon not just this case but several other cases, because he's out raising money on issues in which he's supposed to be defending the state of North Carolina, and that's against all judicial or legal conflict of interest rules, where you're raising money against the defendant which you're supposed to be defending. Any lawyer would get fired from that job if they were representing anyone in the private sector in such a way. Any other questions?
This is just the latest. There have been a number of laws overturned or blocked by the federal courts from the General Assembly. What impact, if any, do you think this will have on the elections come November?
I don't know. I don't think the photo ID was to protect the integrity of the ballot box, and it's the right thing to do. Again, we do it to cash a check, we do it to get Sudafed, we do it at the airport, we do it to get into the Democratic Convention to vote. There's a lot of hypocrisy here, and I think you need to ask the question is, why would anyone not want to have a photo ID law when it clearly worked in the primary? The statistics show that there was not one case in which there was known discrimination as a result of the photo ID. That was presented in this court case, but I think sadly the federal courts, through some of these more liberal appointees, I think have gotten extremely political in their opinions, and many judges are saying that. Read the Wall Street Journal editorial page today, and you'll see a very different opinion on a very politicized opinion by 3 very liberal judges.
What do you think this means for voters? I mean, do you think this breeds confusion? election? I mean, this is another.
Yeah, what's ironic is the primary went extremely well with photo ID because we had free IDs available. I mean, the court obviously didn't see what happened during our primary and what's happened in 33 other states throughout the United States of America. So again, I think if you asked most voters in North Carolina, the vast majority of voters saying requiring an ID, a photo ID, makes sense to protect the integrity of the ballot box, especially at a time when literally tens of millions of dollars are involved in this political process. I mean, tens of millions of dollars. And the United States has had voter difficulties in the past. To go back to my childhood during the Kennedy election, West Virginia and Chicago. And if you think North Carolina is exempt from voter fraud in the future, we're very naive. We're the 9th largest state in population, and there's literally going to be tens of millions of dollars in this campaign. And this North Carolina is going to be extremely important in the presidential campaign and all the other campaigns down ballot. And for anyone to assume that there's not the potential for people abusing the ballot box when there's so much at stake and so much money into the system, I think is being naive. And all I have to do is look at the history of Texas and Illinois and West Virginia and previous campaigns. And if you think North Carolina is exempt from those pressures, I think your head's in a box.
Time for one more, guys.
Do you have the same concern about the same-day registration and early voting portions of that ruling, or are you more comfortable with that?
Yeah, again, compare our state to the state where Hillary Clinton resides. We have much more liberal policies than New York State regarding early registration. So you might want to go ask Hillary Clinton and also go ask her, in order to vote for Hillary Clinton on the floor of the Democratic Convention, you needed a photo ID. If it's good enough for the Democratic Convention to have a photo ID, isn't it good enough for the North Carolina ballot box? I think so.
But do you have a problem with restoring same-day registration, for example?
I think we ought to defend the laws of the state of North Carolina, which were passed through the democratic process. As they were passed, some of these laws, other laws were passed when Democrats were in control. And that should have been the law, and whoever was the Attorney General at that time should enforce that law. And so let's be consistent on both sides of the aisle. Thank you all very much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much. Glad to have you here.